Welcome into the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and the Britannia Arms of Capitola. If you're interested in checking out either location on the shores of the Pacific Ocean or in Silicon Valley, Britannia Arms of Capitola, right there in the Capitola Village, the border of San Jose and Cupertino for the Britannia Arms of Silicon Valley. Check them out, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, Facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola. You can get the phone numbers there. You can get menus. You can get everything you want there as we welcome you into the studio for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vada Party. Charlie O with you on this Thursday, November 18th.
I was going to say,
2020. Yeah, no.
well, you at the Britannia Arms this week.
Yeah, I'm so relaxed these last 2 days, these last week and a half after everything that I'm kind of forgetting my days. But anyway, it's Thursday, which means it's football Thursday, although we officially have a Friday football show. Tomorrow, we're going to start with a little NFL football. Tonight, week 11, we'll get going. The NBA, we've got the top 5 teams, but for our purposes, we've got the spread records of those teams and the over-unders, a very surprising fact on totals in the NBA, and we'll tell you who to print tickets up. If you're in the NHL right now, I've got 8 teams for you that are already going to print playoff tickets coming into this year, and one of them is not the Chicago Blackhawks. So take it from there. Also, award season this year coming to a close with the MVP. We'll get them all going as we get going. Don't forget to check out our social media by 6 Eastern every day during the week on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, we have the Make the Money and Run Facebook page. Also, a group page as well on the weekends, 11 o'clock for college football, 3 times on Saturday, and then twice on Sunday starting at noon. Thanks again to the Britannia Arms for sponsoring us the last 2 weeks, both in Cupertino at a live location for NFL Sunday for Sunday Ticket. And then last Sunday in Capitola, what a day it was in Capitola last week. I don't know if anybody saw it. I'm sure a lot of people saw it when I took the computer outside to show the nice weather that was going on that day on that Sunday. It turned out to be an incredible day. All right, we start with the BCS and college football, the ticker going across as we go to it. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, the top 4 right now in the NCAA, Charlie. We got one game tonight in college football. It's not really a big game. It's be a better basketball game, Louisville and Duke. So we thought we'd hit the rankings right now. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, the top 4, Cincinnati, Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame. The next 4, then Oklahoma State, Wake Forest, round out the top 10. As we get into the ACC, this is what's going to happen with 2 weeks left. The ACC, Wake Forest, 6-0 in their conference. They're going to probably win the Atlantic. Pittsburgh, 5-1 in the Coastal. Virginia 4-2. They play Virginia this weekend, so it's kind of a big game for Virginia, a backwards way to get into the championship game if they have possible. And then Wake Forest, Clemson, Wake Forest at Clemson and at Boston College, Pittsburgh versus Virginia, and at Syracuse to close out the ACC. We've seen enough ACC, Charlie. We're looking at Wake Forest, Pitt in the championship game, or what are you looking at?
You know what? Wake Forest is such a pretender to me. Every time I watch them, I keep going, how are they where they are? I think they're very weak. I could see them losing to Clemson this week easily. The team that I think is the powerhouse in the ACC right now is Pittsburgh. They're the team that I'm most impressed with. I think they've got a powerhouse offense. They're strong on defense. I think they're the team that is to be beaten in the ACC. Clemson is obviously having a tremendous off year, but they're still strong, and you can never count them out. But Wake Forest, I know you look at that 6-0 and you go, wow. Well, don't be impressed by that 6-0 because that is smoke and mirrors.
It'll be interesting to see. Clemson has Wake Forest this weekend, and they will have at South Carolina the following weekend. If Wake Forest slips up twice and Clemson wins these games, they can end up taking that south. So it'll be an interesting 2 weeks here for Wake Forest and Clemson, and also in Pittsburgh too. If they can't get past Virginia this weekend, then Virginia's got a shot to take that Atlantic Conference or take that Coastal Conference there as Pittsburgh leads. Kenny Pickett, a Heisman Trophy candidate, or he should be a Heisman Trophy candidate for Pitt. They got by North Carolina last week, and we'll see how they do this week. All right, moving on to the Big 12 here. Oklahoma lost to Baylor. They're out of the national championship picture, but they and Oklahoma State both 6-1. Baylor 5-2 with the win over Oklahoma last Saturday. Was the last Saturday or the Saturday before? I forget. I think it was I think it was 2 Saturdays ago that Baylor beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma will have Iowa State and the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State will be at Texas Tech this weekend. Here is the big news for the Big 12 this weekend. Oklahoma State, number 9 in the BCS, or number 9 in the BCS, number 10 in the BCS, I think. What? I just had it. Damn it.
No, number 9.
Okay, they're number 9. And Oklahoma 14. They're both tied. If they both win this weekend, which is pretty likely, they've got Iowa State, does Oklahoma at home, and Oklahoma State going to Texas Tech. Don't sleep on Texas Tech. That Red River Shootout the following weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, will be huge for both teams. Maybe possibly, if there's some slip up for Oklahoma State, maybe to move up higher into the BCS rankings, Oklahoma can get into the top 10 if there's a lot of slip up. But the Red River Shootout, one of the bigger rivalries in college football, Charlie O.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, that whole Big 12 situation down there. They've just been beating up on each other this entire season. I've got to tell you a little Texas Tech story that I came across this morning. The Texas Tech broadcast crew has been banned from their game this weekend because last week they were berating the officials in their game. And the Big 12 commissioner has said they broke protocol for good sportsmanship. So they've banned them from broadcasting their game. I'm telling you, the Big 12, they need to just cancel that entire conference, send everybody to some other conference, because they're done. They're toast. When you start banning, other than if you're doing, something so egregious, but when you get banned for criticizing officials.
Oklahoma State, the top 2 teams. Baylor right there as well too, with the win over Oklahoma. If Oklahoma State slips up, they can possibly get into a position to be part of the championship weekend 3 weeks from now, after Thanksgiving weekend, the weekend after Thanksgiving, championship Saturday. All right, we'll move on to the Big 10 real quick. Again, Vasi Vadaparty, Charlie O here on the Make the Money and Run podcast. We're going through the standings here for the last 2 weekends of college football. We've seen all the college football coming up to this weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, going into championship Saturday, and also the BCS rankings as we get to it. Ohio State has Michigan State this weekend. That's huge. Number 7, Michigan State. Number 4, Ohio State. Michigan State can trip them up and could trip Ohio State up very easily this weekend if they can run the ball. Michigan has Maryland this weekend, and then they will have Ohio State the following weekend. And Jim Harbaugh needs to win that game against Ohio State. I'm sure it's in the back of his mind, but I give Michigan State and Michigan a chance. I don't know if they'll be able to after Ohio State put 59 points up, but the following week is going to be at Michigan. Not that it's helped Michigan in the last few years, especially certainly under the Harbaugh tenure. But here we are in the Big West, the East side. Ohio State is pretty much. Let me look at the standings here. Ohio State 7-0, Michigan State 6-1, Michigan 6-1. Those 3 teams fighting it out for the East. Ohio State, this is big 2 weeks for Ohio State. They can clearly get it with the wins. They'll be undefeated. Obviously, they'll have the head-to-head. If Michigan State can win and they tie up, if Michigan somehow wins over Ohio State goes down to 3 in the standings in the East, then we've got a situation going on where Michigan State will win because they've got the tiebreaker over Michigan, Charlie.
Yep, and if pigs could fly, Ohio State will lose this weekend. You know that I have ties to Michigan State. I love Michigan State. They are not going to beat Ohio State at the Shoe this weekend. I'm sorry, they're just not. Ohio State is tough. They're even tougher when they play in Columbus. And I just, Michigan State is not tough enough to beat them in Columbus. I think the only chance that the Buckeyes have to lose at this point is when they travel up to the Big House the following week to play Michigan. And I don't even think Michigan's got enough to beat them there, just because Ohio State, they're like a locomotive. and they're just they had that slip up against Oregon, and I don't want to say that Oregon won that game. There was no hey, they were lucky, whatever else. They beat Ohio State. Period. They earned that victory. But I don't think Ohio State's going to lose either one of those games. And the one thing that I want to say clearly, Jim Harbaugh's job will not be on the line if he loses to the Buckeyes this year. The fan base will not be happy, because they're never happy when they lose to Ohio State. But he's done more than enough to have his job be solid and move on into next year. It's been amazing how he's kind of come back and been solid. So Harbaugh's going to be back next year, no problem. Nobody will be happy. Michigan State fans aren't happy when they lose to Ohio State. Nobody's happy when they lose to Ohio State, except they all lose to Ohio State. So it's just the way it is.
It's going to be an interesting weekend in the Big Ten on the east side. But don't forget about the West here. Wisconsin and Iowa tied at 5-2, Minnesota 4-3, Purdue 4-3. They're kind of out of it with the losses that they've had the last few weeks. But Wisconsin, Iowa, it'll be interesting to see who comes out of the West, because they have not played each other, I don't think. I don't have the schedule in front of me. But Wisconsin has Nebraska and Minnesota. Iowa has Illinois and Northwestern. Based on those 4 games, Nebraska could be tough. At Minnesota, the Brown Jug game, that's their rivalry game. And Iowa versus Illinois, that Illinois' defense has played better this year, and Iowa struggled offensively. Northwestern, they were not as good as we thought they were going to be this year to start, especially after the opening weekend against Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Michigan State ran all over them, and we both thought that Northwestern was going to play better and come out better as a 3-point favorite in that opening weekend season. A conference that opened with a conference game, by the way, compared to what we're going to get to in the SEC in about 5 seconds. But the advantage here, I kind of want to give the advantage to Iowa, even though Iowa's offense has struggled, and their over-unders are never more than like somewhere between 38 and 42. I don't have the line in front of me yet for Iowa, Illinois, but I got to believe that's like a 38 over-under. And then Northwestern will probably be right there as well, too, 41, 42. So Wisconsin, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Iowa, Northwestern, Charlie, the Big Ten West on the line. Thoughts?
Well, I think if you look at that initially, you've got to give the lean towards Iowa if they were to win this week, and you've got Illinois and Northwestern left on your schedule. You'd go, yeah, Iowa. Except that's exactly the kind of schedule where somebody gets tripped up. You walk in and because I think that's the kind of schedule where a football team goes, we're there. And then you walk into someplace like Champaign-Urbana, or you go to Evanston. I'm not sure whether these games are home games or on the road, but those are the kind of schedules where a team gets tripped up, and that becomes the scary part. But if they should get by Wisconsin, and that's not going to be easy, because Wisconsin doesn't score a lot of points, but they have great defense. Yeah. And that's always going to be the issue there. But I would have to give the lean to Iowa if they can get by the Badgers this weekend.
Iowa has 2 home games. Wisconsin has the home game versus Nebraska. They are at Minnesota the following week, the Brown Jug game, I believe it is. Wisconsin has the tiebreaker. They're in first right now. So I guess the road game against Minnesota, the Brown Jug game, that rivalry game, they've had tough games with Minnesota. So that could be to Iowa's advantage in terms of coming out of the West and in the championship game, either against Ohio State or the other 2 Michigan teams. We're believing it's Ohio State that's probably going to come out after these next 2 weekends and keep their number 4 ranking as well, too. All right, we move on the Make the Money and Run podcast. We'll get to lines and we'll get to all that. Don't forget Friday football show. We'll preview all the games. It'll be Vasu Vada Party, myself solo hosting tomorrow. Charlie will be out, so we'll get to some of the good games here in a second. As we're doing in college football right now. The Pac-12 North, Oregon has a 2-game lead on Washington State. I don't see them losing. They're going to be at Utah. Big game this weekend. Big game for Utah. Utah needs one more win. They've got the tiebreaker over Arizona State. So it looks like this could be a conference championship matchup, Charlie, already. And this is a big one Saturday night. Utah, and then they've got what used to be called the Civil War at Oregon State. Or I'm sorry, they're at home versus Oregon State the following weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. And then the South, as we said, Utah, Oregon, but they've got Colorado the following week. ASU is playing Oregon State this weekend, and they've got their rivalry game against Arizona. So 3 teams in the Pac-12 race in terms of the conference championship and the conference games. We watch this conference all year long. We're on the West Coast. We see pretty much every game. So I just want to get your thoughts on it, Charlie, as somebody who watches it from afar.
Yeah, I got to take. I just kind of feel I've kind of lost interest in the Pac-12 just because I kind of feel like it's Oregon, Oregon, Oregon. At this point, everybody else is kind of just. I was kind of excited because I thought UCLA was gonna become more of a factor this year, and unfortunately, they're improved, and I'm happy about that. But it's all Oregon, and Utah has been has provided some interest, and I'm glad about that. I want the Pac-12. I'm not a big Pac-12 fan. Okay, I'm really not, because I grew up in the Midwest and I'm really a Big Ten fan. But I live on the West Coast. I want West Coast fans to have something to cheer about, but I also want the Pac-12 to be a factor in the BCS and all of those other kind of things. I think it's good for football. And they need to be more than a one-team conference to really generate the buzz that they need for across the country. So I want to see more than that happen. But right now, Oregon's playing good football. I still think that number 3 ranking is a gift. I really believe that Cincinnati should be, somebody ought to be out of that top 4, and Cincinnati should be in there. I really believe that, but the odds are stacked against them, and I don't think Cincinnati will be in that top 4 when the final rankings are done.
So we'll have all the set lines and the game point spread lines tomorrow. But early line is, and if they knock them off, this will throw the BCS out of whack, and maybe it'll help Cincinnati. But Utah's a 3-point favorite at home on Saturday night against Oregon, Charlie. So a little surprising there.
I think Vegas wants some money, is what I think.
So I don't know, boy, but I would think a lot of people would put money on Oregon for our show purpose. I think a lot of people put money on Oregon because they're number 3 in the country in the rankings, and they're getting underdog value here in terms of the game itself. -3 for Utah. That's a little surprising to me. I thought it'd be Pick'em or Oregon favored by 3.
Well, I actually am surprised by that as well, and I know where my money's going.
Yeah,
barring injury reports and everything else.
Yeah,
but I am surprised by that.
The odds makers probably see what we see. Oregon's been inconsistent in quarterback play. They played close games against teams that probably in the past that they used to blow out as well. Pac-12, interesting week this weekend. Washington, Colorado, UCLA, USC, Cal Stanford in the big game in the Bay Area, Arizona State, Oregon State, and then Arizona, Washington State. And, of course, Thanksgiving weekend, you've got all the other rivalries that go on. All right, we move on to the SEC here. We'll hit the SEC. Georgia will win the East. They're undefeated. They're 3 games up on the closest team, which I believe is Kentucky. Kentucky had some big wins early, but they're 8-0, 10-0 overall. They get Georgia Southern this week. Let me see. I thought I had it up here. I don't have it up here.
Yeah,
but then they've got that
Georgia Southern. You said
Georgia Southern, and then they go to Georgia Tech for their rivalry game. They're going to win the East. There's no doubt about it. The only thing that possibly could happen in these next 2 weeks is shout out to Len Konechny to your Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They're going to come in and visit you.
So I'm a rambling wreck from Georgia. Okay, never mind.
So if Georgia Tech can find a way to play against Georgia, I don't know if that'll knock them out of the number 1 spot because they've been dominant, but we'll see. By the way, I'm looking at this. 387 points scored for Georgia, 76 allowed through 10 games.
That's crazy.
7 point, for those of you that aren't math majors, is still 7.6 a game. And these last 2 weeks, the Tennessee game, they gave up 14. And then the Kentucky game, they gave up 16. So you take those out of the equation, it's probably about 5 a game is if you take those games out of it as well. So very interesting, Georgia in the East. But the interesting part is in the West. Alabama 5-1. They're going to play a pretty decent Arkansas team. Alabama's defense hasn't been great. Arkansas's offense is much improved. They had some quality wins this year. They are 3-3 in the conference. They're not going anywhere conference-wise, but they are 21 in the country. They're 7-3 overall, 5-1 at home. So 1-2 on the road. That's not going to be easy before they get to the Iron Bowl. But Arkansas's offense, Their defense can't stop anybody. So this may be an Alabama deal for them. But either of these two games, Arkansas or Auburn in the Iron Bowl, they're going to Auburn. We've seen Auburn upset Alabama in the past, especially 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the big upset Auburn over Alabama. Charlie.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl, I think, is a potential upset for Alabama, just because that game gets crazy, especially when it's on the road. And Auburn is a team that has been, I think, a little bit. They've been above expectations this year a little bit, so I think that's there. I just want to back up a little bit about the Georgia Bulldogs playing Georgia Southern this week. I am absolutely apoplectic about the SEC having these walkover games at this point in the season. Was it Alabama last week had New Mexico State, and won 59-3, I think it was.
Barely covered the 51.5, by the way.
Yes, I know, and I took them and covered it. I mean, I'm not disappointed from a wagerer standpoint, but you know what? From a competitive standpoint, this is a freaking joke.
Right.
Okay. I mean, they should automatically be penalized and dropped out of the top rankings for putting having a game that is that non-competitive at this point in the season. Now, if they want to have these games at the beginning of the season, I get that. Okay, and it's also helpful to the schools for the money. Okay, but at this point in the season, when you're 9-10 games into the season, they have this kind of a walkover game. No, there should be some kind of a penalty at this point. If you had this kind of game in college basketball, you wouldn't make the tournament. Okay,
right?
Because it would affect your power rankings. It's wrong, and it just infuriates me that here we are. We're walking down to BCS selections for the playoffs, and you got this kind of game. It drives me nuts.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens these next 2 weeks. The Iron Bowl has always been very competitive. Mississippi's still in the mix here. I mean, they would have to have a lot to happen. Alabama would have to lose twice. Mississippi would need to win twice, one against Vanderbilt at home. Probably will win that game. And then Mississippi State and their defense. Mississippi State and their defense, though, is pretty tough, even though Mike Leach is kind of wacko the way their teams have played the last few weeks. But they're
Mike Leach is wacko to start with.
Yeah, that's a good point. So they will go for the Egg Bowl. Mississippi. That Egg Bowl has always been an interesting game, though. It's a very entertaining game. But somehow Alabama, if they can't pick it up against Arkansas or at Auburn, Mississippi could find themselves in the Western Division as a Western Division champion. It's not going to happen. It's going to be Georgia and Alabama. But I'm glad that Mississippi still feels like they have a shot. They'll play. And, of course, the rivalry game, the Egg Bowl, is a huge game for both schools in that region because that's their rivalry game as well, too. All right, we'll move on. One more quick note here. We're going to hit the Mountain West, and then we'll hit the American. One interesting note about the American, by the way, before we hit the Mountain West. Houston is 7-0, and Cincinnati is 6-0. They both play these 2 weekends. And if Houston wins both, they end up winning the division by half a game over the Cincinnati Bearcats because they're not going to have enough games. They're going to be one game behind. I don't know where that scheduling snafu came about, but they're 7-0 and Cincinnati is 6-0 going into this weekend, and both have 2 games this weekend and next weekend. I'll have a full deal for you on Friday Football Show, but it seems to me that they're not going to have the same number of games. And if Houston wins, they're going to be one game up on the standings and could end up winning that division while Cincinnati's still number 5 in the BCS. So very interesting scenario there. We'll figure that out tomorrow. Maybe get some answers from somebody on the national scale as to how that works. But the Mountain West, our conference, Utah State 5-1. They are going to play Wyoming and at New Mexico. Air Force and Boise State 4-2 each. Utah State slips up, and they could. It's not a powerful conference, but Air Force has had a good year. Boise State, kind of disappointing for their standards, but somehow if they can get into this, Boise State might be able to sneak out of this. But I can't see Utah State losing to Wyoming at home. And New Mexico, we talked about New Mexico last week. Not a very good football program, and I can see Utah State at 7-1. Now, who they'll play in the West, Fresno State is 5-2. San Diego State 5-1. Bulldogs have the tiebreakers. You remember a few weeks ago, Fresno State went into San Diego and beat them. So San Diego State will have their 2 games, and Fresno State will have their 2 games. They end up tied. That's a Fresno State West Division championship, and they'll be playing in the Mountain West championship game, Charlie.
Yeah, every time I think San Diego State's got this thing tied up, they let me down. So I don't know. And Fresno State, you can never sleep on that program. So I think I agree with you. I think Utah State's got the Mountain Division pretty well sewn up. I don't see them losing to New Mexico or to Wyoming. But right now, that Western Division, I'll tell you, I wouldn't sleep on the Bulldogs. I would not sleep.
I would not either.
So that's pretty competitive.
As much as I hate to say it, I would not sleep on the Bulldogs. I have a little angst about Fresno State from my days in school. Yes.
I'm not going there. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Fresno State wind up as the champions of that division, just because the Aztecs scare me a little bit. I mean, they've only given up 171 points, which is the best in the conference, but they just, I don't know, they just seem to have these mental lapses. I don't know what else to describe them as, and when they have them, you just kind of go, what happened to the Aztecs? Where was the team that I've been liking all season long? So I don't know.
We'll have an interesting weekend for sure. San Diego State, Fresno State in the West. Fresno State with the tiebreaker, but they're 5-2. San Diego State 5-1 in the conference. Utah State, we believe, will win the conference in the Mountain West. Going to be an interesting 2 weeks here in all the conferences as we look ahead to college football championship Saturday in 2 weeks from now. Don't forget the Friday football show will be with us as well tomorrow. We'll go through all the point spreads as well. All right, the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola and of Cupertino. Check them out on the web. Get down there in Silicon Valley. Get down there in Capitola on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. When we come back in 30 seconds on the Make the Money and Run podcast, we will get to the NFL. Week 11 of the NFL. We will have the preview of tonight's game. 28-3. Remind anybody of anything? We'll explain to you when we come back out of the break. 30 seconds on the Make the Money and Run podcast for this Thursday, November 18th, 2021. Vasu and Charlie, here are your hosts. Take care. Welcome back, everybody, to Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vada Party Charlie O, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and the Britannia Arms of Capitola, Silicon Valley, and the shores of the Pacific Ocean for both Britannia Arms NFL Sunday Ticket. Great place to go watch games, both in Silicon Valley and on the beach in Capitola, in the Capitola Village down there. A great place to go enjoy Sunday football. Actually, any day you go in there is actually really good, but Sunday football, they preach the NFL Sunday Ticket. They've got all the games on. Terrific setup that they have both in Cupertino and in Capitola. All right, tonight, Thursday night football. Everybody's got to play on Thursday night, so here we are, the New England Patriots, who are 6-4 now after their just ass-kicking of Cleveland last weekend. Cleveland Browns, how's those Super Bowl picks going, everybody, for those Cleveland Browns? Did not believe them in the beginning. Still don't believe in them. Having a tough time right now. No Nick Chubb, no Kareem Hunt. Dearness Johnson's actually been pretty good at running back, and they've got this kid Felton, but nobody played last week at the running back game. They had a tough time throwing the ball against New England, and old Belichick comes up with a scheme every time, and they've got Mac Jones leading the way. They're 6-4. The Falcons trying to stay relevant in the NFC. That loss last week did not help them, but I was going back, and I said 28-3, a rematch of the Super Bowl 51 in Houston 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. 34-28, the first Super Bowl to go into overtime. Falcons, we all know the story. 28-3, they had the lead. Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, now the 49ers head coach, was the coordinator for the Falcons then. Brady, LeGarrette Blount, Chris Hogan, Martellus Bennett, a young Rob Gronkowski, some of the names on there. Matt Ryan, who's still there with the Falcons now. Devontae Freeman, who I believe is with Baltimore now. Julio Jones is at Tennessee. Mohamed Sanu with the 49ers. Names have changed, but I'm sure a lot of people in New England fondly remember that game, and the people in Atlanta are like, why are we playing them on Thursday night to get in front of everybody with no other football game to take the attention off of us, Charlie? But here we are, week 11. 7, by the way, for New England on the road, 47 the total for the Patriots tonight.
Yeah, it's those histories are fine. It has nothing to do with this game at all. Players have changed. Quarterbacks are gone. Tight ends.
Well, Matt Ryan's there. You can't say that.
Well, yeah. Well, he's in a wheelchair. Anyway, it's an interesting thing. The Patriots. I mean, good Lord, the Patriots are 6-4. Did anybody see the Patriots being 6-4?
Nope. I thought Buffalo was going to run away with the division, and here they are at 6-4. They're a half game back of Buffalo, 1 game back in the loss column. Buffalo didn't look great. Actually, they lost to Jacksonville. They looked better against the Jets, but everybody's looked better against the Jets. So here they are with a chance to go into Buffalo, or whenever they play Buffalo. I'm sure one of those games is at the end of the year to maybe sneak out of an AFC championship here, because the Bills are not playing great.
No, they're not. And all of this talk, okay, and of Bill Belichick, he's really not that great a coach. It was all Tom Brady. He just, come on, people. Were he and Brady a team? Were they outstanding? Would they still be better together? Well, of course they would. I mean, you got 2 generational talents there that when you split them apart, of course there's going to be a difference, and it takes a little while to put things together. Man, Mac Jones, didn't see him coming along that great. And of course, what's the fun thing that's going around now? The big rumors related to the 49ers. Well, Shanahan really wanted Mac Jones, and he got overruled. Now I don't believe that for a minute. But it makes.
I thought they should have taken Mac Jones. I thought that all summer. We talked about
that. There's a lot of talk, and I'm not so sure that and I was a part of that talk as well, because I thought our good friend Casey Freelove said the same thing, because he played on that professional team down in Alabama there. And so, he had just been, changing teams with staying in the same league. So it would have been, that was a joke. That's what you were supposed to. But he's done terrific, and if you don't think that's not under Belichick's tutelage that this is happening, you're absolutely wrong. So that's how quickly Belichick can develop a scheme and put some talent around him and make things go. So it's phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. So all those people who think that Bill Belichick was only riding on Tom Brady's coattails, you were wrong.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels, a lot to do with the offense. Belichick, of course, runs the defense pretty much, but he puts a game plan in as well. But they speak to each other very often during the week. Mac Jones has done the same thing that Brady does. He goes into the office and they watch game film together with Bill Belichick. But Josh McDaniels gets a lot of credit for helping Mac Jones come along. I don't think anybody thought, we definitely didn't see the Patriots coming along this fast, and they got a chance to win the division here. It's going to be interesting. Don't count out Atlanta yet. 4-5. They're tied with the 49ers and Minnesota at 4-5. Minnesota's actually played pretty well after their win against the Chargers last week. Carolina Panthers are 5-5. They're in the 7th spot. And don't forget, 7 teams make the division right now. So Minnesota 4-5. They have the tiebreaker over the 49ers and Atlanta. The 49ers have the tiebreak over Atlanta based on conference games. And there's Atlanta at 4-5 as well, too. A win here. 49ers go into Jacksonville. That's tough. Minnesota's got Green Bay. That's tough. Carolina has somebody that's tough too. They have Washington. Washington's offense, they just came off beating Tampa Bay as well too. So if Atlanta at home getting 7 points, a total of 47, can put some kind of game plan together. The Patriots are not the best team in the NFL. They're the best team. They're one of the best teams right now, and they're winning streak. But that would not shock me to see the Falcons win tonight. They've got 3 game-winning kicks from their kicker, Koo. He's been the best player on their team this year. Yeah, they're missing Julio Jones. Yeah, they're missing a little bit of a running game. But defensively, they've been okay. And they're right there at 4-5 after this horrendous 0-3 start the Falcons have. But a loss by the Panthers, a loss by the 49ers, a loss by the Vikings, which are all 3 possible. And the Falcons, we know this is the NFL. We know teams can look at the Dolphins last week against the Ravens. Who had that? Oh, wait, I did. I had that last week at +9. But anyway, the same principle applies tonight. And you did too. Charlie, 7-point underdog at home against the Patriots tonight. And if they can somehow play any defense and stop that New England running game, kind of put any pressure on Mac Jones at all, it's a possibility that they could win this game. And don't think those fans aren't they do get loud in Atlanta. I know we don't see a lot of them, but they do get loud, and they do have short memories. And this is a Super Bowl rematch, whether anybody likes to believe it or not. But you get to somehow get a win against the Patriots. You're at home. It's not that surprising. And these other 3 teams lose. All of a sudden, you jump up to 5-5. They're all 4-6, fighting their way through, or 5-6 in Carolina's case, and then 4-6 for the other 2. They're in 7th place, and they're in the playoff spot. And who knows what happens there going in the last 6 weeks of the year, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, Vasu, that I think we got to keep in mind, though, is that New England is 4-0 on the road.
Right.
So that's this is a team that thrives on the road. They're only 2-4 at home, but they're 4-0 on the road. By the way, just so we get into it from wagering purposes, they're 6-4 overall against the spread. Atlanta's 4-5 on the road. The Patriots are 3-1 against the spread. At home, Atlanta is 1-3 against the spread. So on the road, the Patriots are 2-2 on the over and under, and at home, the Falcons are 2-2 on the over and under.
Yeah, I don't know. 47 might be a little high for me in this game. If Atlanta's defense plays anything, the Patriots might just run the ball, and if they can run the ball, they'll be able to take the time of possession, and they'll be able to keep Atlanta off the field. And if they get up to a big lead, you can guarantee Belichick is not going to do anything to run up the score. And that under looks very tempting right there. But it is a rematch of Super Bowl 51. It is Thursday Night Football. It is Week 11. We get down to the crux of it as well, too. The Patriots are 7-47 going into tonight. All right, some of the weekend games, we'll get to a full detail of them on Sunday for the NFL, but I want Charlie to get in on some of these games. He's not going to be with us on Friday Football Show. We'll have intern Nick with us as well, too, and we'll get more into college and more in the NFL. These are the games I circled as big games this weekend. Charlie, if there's anything else that's not on there, Lions, Browns, 49ers, Jaguars, Colts, Bills, Ravens, Bears, Saints, Eagles, Titans, Texans, Packers, Vikings, Bengals, Raiders, Cardinals, Seahawks, Cowboys, Chiefs, Steelers, Chargers. And we'll get to Monday night on Monday, but that's a pretty big game for Tampa Bay and the New York Giants as well, too, on Monday night. So what games are you looking at, either off this list or just in general? There's a lot of good games, a lot of standing variations that could happen after this weekend, Charlie.
Well, interestingly enough, as you've been talking about it, and I've given you a bad time about it, but that Lions-Browns game, we've been talking about it. At some point,
and this is the Cleveland Browns, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I've got that game circled right now, and if anybody dares say that Baker Mayfield is not tough, they're going to have to come and deal with me outside the building.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is so beat up.
Yeah.
Torn labrum, knee issue, ankle issue. This guy, I don't know how he's limping on the field. I really don't. And then I heard somebody earlier this week, one of the talking heads, talk about, I think Baker's losing the team. Do what? No team in the world is a quarterback going to lose when the guy has to practically be wheeled out on a two-wheeler out onto the field to just be out there in the huddle. You're not losing your team. So now, of course they've been up and down a little bit, but the team's been in a mash unit all season long. So he's not losing the team. But this game is a little scary if you're a Cleveland fan, because you got a desperate Lions team.
But they're not going to go on 16.
And I've been giving Vasu a bad time, but he is absolutely right. This team is not going to go 0-16. They may go.
Well, they can't now. They've got a tie.
Yeah, right. But they're going to get a win at some point.
They are.
And with Cleveland beat up, this could be the one. So that's interesting. I think the Colts Bills game is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the Bills?
Who are the Colts?
Well,
no, I know. They're 5-2 after starting out 0-3, and that's a rematch of the wild card game. And Indianapolis almost upset Buffalo last year in the wild card game.
Yep. So I think that's a very interesting game. I think this game is much more important for the Bills than it is the Colts. Although the Colts want to do well, because I think they have the potential to keep themselves going there and in the playoff talks. But the Bills, they got to get themselves right. I mean, they got to figure out who they are and start putting some wins together. That team, there's a lot wrong with them, and so it's one that's very interesting. I'm interested to see what the 49ers do against the Jags.
Yes, me too.
Because they're coming off a huge win over the Rams, which, okay, who saw that coming? Not this guy.
Somebody did, not me.
And not this guy. Not this guy just seeing the win, and not this guy on the wager line. Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to be that honest. But now this is an important win to the 49ers, because they cannot let down. Because you got a hungry team in Jacksonville that they've had some taste. They've got a couple of wins.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the number one overall quarterback, overall draft pick. You've got a rookie head coach, who's got a big name, and they're desperate to prove to everybody that they're worth all of that. And they would love to take advantage of a team that's traveling west to east on a short week and make a name for themselves by beating the 49ers. So the 49ers, that's an important game for them this week, I think.
Everything I said about the Falcons and that 7-11 spot, and I guess you could include Philadelphia in the 11th spot, but everything I said about Carolina, Minnesota, San Francisco as it relates to Atlanta tonight goes exactly the same for the 49ers, because Atlanta and San Francisco have the same record, and any one of these four teams can lose. Any one of these four teams can win, but there could be a shakeup after this weekend between Carolina, Minnesota, San Francisco, Atlanta, and I'm not even going to throw Philadelphia out of it yet at 4-6. They are in 11th, but they do have that 6th loss, and that's a big one there, Charlie.
Here's what I have to say about Philadelphia. Okay, never mind.
Well, boy, they looked awfully good against Denver last week.
You're right. I just my friends in Philly, I just have to do that for them.
Well, let's wrap up this NFL segment. Let me go through a couple of the games here for me. The Lions, Browns, yes, because the Browns, Super Bowl contenders, they're there. They're in 11th place right now. The Browns, going backwards, the Browns, the Colts, the Bengals, the Raiders, the Chargers, 7 through 11, including the Broncos at 5-5. So 7 through 12 are either 5-4 or 5-5. So what we just said about the NFC, that could happen in the AFC as well too. We're a big flip up, get a big flop of standings and big teams going up and down. And then New England's in 6th at 6-4. Pittsburgh 5-3 after that tie last week, 5-3-1 now. Kansas City now leads the division. Let's talk about the Chiefs for a second. How many people are worried about the Chiefs now when we started at the beginning of the year? And where are the Chiefs now after week 10? They're in first place in the AFC West. How about that, Charlie?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, what a resurgence. And thank you, Patrick Mahomes, for finally coming alive. You're my fantasy quarterback. Thank you. Okay, but you know what? Big game this weekend.
They've got the Cowboys. Yeah, the Cowboys. That's a big game. Cowboys 7-2. that huge loss to Denver kind of took them away. If they didn't lose to Denver, they'd be the number one team in the NFL right now because Green Bay and Arizona both have 2 losses. And so you're looking at Green Bay, Arizona, Dallas at the top, Tampa Bay. How did they lose to Washington? But they did. Any given Sunday. We hate to say that. I don't like to use that phrase because you can see what the reasons were if you watch the film afterwards. But they're in 4th, 6-3. The Rams have a better record, 7-3. And then we talk about the Saints at 5-4. Now, let me rephrase that again. Everything I said about 7-11 also includes the Saints now at number 6 at 5-4. So now we're talking about 6-11. It's all confusing, Charlie. 6-11, and then 6-12 in the AFC. What are we going to do this weekend? Where are we going to throw our money?
I don't know yet. which is what makes it so fun.
Yeah, lots of interest there. All right, we're going to wrap up. We'll have a full Friday.
But I can tell you one thing where we're going to throw our money: underdogs.
I will have that number tomorrow. The underdogs are still about 10 games above 500 this year in terms of the NFL. We'll have that for sure. But lots of good games, lots of standings repercussions this week. 6 teams still in the playoff hunt. The top 4 teams still fighting out for the best records as well, too. It's not over yet by any means. We're in week 11 with the Patriots and Falcons. All right, we come back in 30 seconds. We'll hit the NBA, college basketball as well, too. The Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino and the Britannia Arms of Capitola. Check them out whenever you're in Silicon Valley or on the shores of the Pacific Ocean in Capitola Village. 30 seconds with the NBA, college basketball wrap-up, and we'll give you a little NHL and MLB to close the show out. Vasu Vadaparty, Charlie O here for the Make the Money and Run podcast for this Thursday. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vadaparty, Charlie O here, the Britannia Arms of Capitola and the Britannia Arms of Cupertino are. Thank you very much for sponsorship as well.
Thank you, guys.
Had by me the last 2 weeks in Cupertino and in Capitola to visit on Sunday football. They've got Sunday ticket. They've got everything you need there. As we welcome you back into the studio, the NCAA basketball ticker at the bottom, the top 25 teams. I know college basketball, it's really early, but the one thing about college basketball that I love, and I love college basketball, and we all love it in March. We all love it when conference play starts in January and February. But these teams, unlike college football, they will play each other at the beginning of the year, as evidenced by the Champions Classic last weekend and the with Kansas and Michigan State, Duke and Kentucky. You look at the top 25 right now, Charlie. Gonzaga, UCLA, Kansas, Michigan, although Michigan will go down. They lost to Seton Hall. 32 years for Seton Hall. Hey, all right, no revenge factor there. It took them 32 years to beat Michigan after the championship game. Villanova, who lost to UCLA, so I don't see them going down. Purdue won by 47 the other night against Wright State. Duke is Duke. Texas played well the other night as well, too. Baylor got a big win. Illinois, Memphis, Oregon. How about Oregon? They get beat by 40 at home to BYU. That was a very shot. I mean, that's going to drop them big time down. So I'm just looking through the top 25 here. Kentucky, yeah, they lost to Duke. That was a good game. They had a chance to win that game as well, too. Houston's pretty good. Tennessee's good. How about North Carolina under Hubert Davis? They're at 19 now. Ohio State, Ohio State at number 20. They've got or 19. They've got Xavier tonight. That's not a bad matchup. In-state rivalry against Xavier. They're a 2.5-point favorite there. And then you got Maryland, Auburn, and St. Bonaventure is 22 in the nation. UConn, Florida, USC. So some very familiar names, obviously, in the top 25. But then you look at St. Bonaventure. They haven't been there in a long time. You look at Illinois. Hasn't been there in a few years. Alabama, not just a football school. This year they've got a pretty good team there. I know it's early, Charlie. I know we haven't watched a lot, but I just want to go back to last week here with Duke, Kentucky, Michigan State, Kansas. The Gavitt Classic this week that I had some of the scores for. I was looking at that game last night with or Tuesday night, Creighton and Nebraska, Villanova over Howard. the Duke game over Gardner-Webb, but there was another one. Houston by 20 over Virginia. Did not see that one coming, so maybe Virginia's got some issues going on. But Seton Hall, Michigan, BYU, Oregon on Tuesday night as well. And then on Monday night, we get Ohio State over Bowling Green. Illinois lost to Marquette on Monday on the road, so that's going to knock them down from number 10, probably down in the 20s after that loss to Marquette, who might be pretty good. No Wojciechowski at Marquette this year. So a lot to take in. UCLA is good. That was a great game Friday night in the overtime game against Villanova. It was midnight Eastern on the East Coast, but a lot of people watched it. I watched it. The Bulls and Warriors were playing at the same time, but when that game ended, I flipped over to the second half of UCLA Villanova, and it turned out to be a lot scarier for me as somebody who had UCLA -3 that it went into overtime. But give UCLA credit, Mick Cronin. Mick Cronin is a good coach, and people that got on him last year, I know a lot of UCLA alum got on him last year, but he's a good coach, and he's got these guys back. He's got Juzang back. He's got Tiger Campbell back. They've got players on that team, and I think that they can, and they already have. They already challenged Gonzaga last year in the Final Four, took an overtime shot by Suggs to keep them out of the championship game, and then, of course, Gonzaga gets blown out by Baylor on Monday night last year. So early thoughts, Charlie. I know you haven't watched a lot. It's too early to say right now, but there have been good games in college basketball to keep people's interest going as we got about another 3 to 4 weeks before conference play starts.
Yeah, Vesu, one of the things that I love about college basketball is what you just said, is that they are not afraid to play big games early. And there are a lot of great matchups that happen early as well in regions, just like a couple that you just mentioned. Creighton, Nebraska. Now, that's a big matchup because they're about 50 miles apart from each other. So that's exciting. Xavier, Ohio State, again, 75 miles from each other in the state of Ohio. Villanova travels out to play UCLA, and that was a whale of a basketball game. I was in my car listening to Josh Lewin call that game on Sirius XM, and they were going nuts because that game seemingly was in hand by Villanova, and then the Bruins started coming back, and even Josh Lewin, who is so even-handed in his play-by-play, you could hear the excitement starting to come up in his throat during that game. Great game. Great game there by the Bruins. So college basketball just stays exciting in the preseason in a way that I don't think any other sport does. So I'm excited that college ball's back. It's kind of fun to see some of the traditional schools being back and being involved. I've got some schools that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Arkansas is one that I want to see how they're going to do this season. I'm going to keep an eye on Kentucky. Kentucky had a real poor year last year, and I want to see what they do because I think, there are some schools that need to do well to keep interest in the sport. Kentucky is one of those schools that need to do well for college basketball, just in general interest. So I'm interested to see what they do. And I think it's fun to see a team like St. Bonaventure all of a sudden be back in the top 25. So that's really fun to see. And then you look and all of a sudden you see USC popping into the top 25. When's the last?
Did I lose you? Shoot. Got to come back. Charlie O. Sorry about that, Charlie O. Hopefully he'll come back and we'll get that. I don't know what happened there. I must have hit a wrong button and accidentally got him out of there. 208.5 here for the Warriors. We're going to go to the NBA right now. I'm just inputting the line on the Warriors as they went through the Curry questionable matter here. But Golden State now 9.5 and 208. As you look at the ticker across the bottom, we're going to get to the NBA games right now. The NBA against the spread right now, the top three teams in the NBA, Golden State 9-4-1 against the spread, Phoenix 8-6, Utah 8-6. The Washington Wizards, who lead the Eastern Conference overall in standings, they're 9-4-1 against the spread. Brooklyn 8-9, even though they're second in the conference. Chicago, who blew a big lead yesterday against Portland, they're 10-5 against the spread. Miami 11-4 against the spread. As I look at the standings, we move on to the NBA. Sorry about that, Charlie. I think I hit the button.
You just have to tell me I'm talking too much. You don't have to cut me off.
I know. I know. Washington, Brooklyn, Chicago, Miami, the top four in regular standings, 10-4, 11-5, 10-5, and 10-5. In the West, the Warriors 12-2. That game against Brooklyn the other night, terrific. The Suns have won 10 in a row. They're 11-3. Utah, Dallas, Denver, and the Clippers all 9-5. Portland coming back from 15 down to beat the Bulls last night, 8-8 with the Lakers 8-8, and then Memphis 7-7. Oklahoma 6-8. We look at the lines tonight. The line for the Warriors and Cavaliers was off the board until just a second ago, and I was putting it up there. You can see it on the bottom ticker now. Golden State 9.5, 208 at Cleveland. Miami got a big win last night. They came back big on New Orleans. Ended up covering the game 6.5, 206.5. Big matchup against Washington. Chance for Miami maybe to show Washington that they're not as good as people think they are, but they've been pretty good this year. Washington lost to Charlotte. They blew a lead themselves at Charlotte last night. Minnesota 2 versus San Antonio. Memphis and the Clippers a pick 'em. Denver 7.5 against an Embiid-less Philadelphia 76ers. Utah 10.5, 215 over Toronto. That seems a little high for me with Toronto. And then, of course, the Golden State 9.5, 208.5. Charlie, the NBA spread numbers for the top three teams in each league. Golden State 9-4-1 on their 12-2 record. Phoenix 11-3, but 8-6, and Utah 8-6 as well on their 9-5 record. In the East, Washington's 9-4-1, Chicago 10-5, 11-4 for Miami, as they are both 10-5 in the East. But how about Brooklyn? Maybe their spreads are a little too high, but for their 10-4 record, they're only 8-9 against the point spread coming in. I believe that's right. 11-5 for Brooklyn. I'm sorry, 11-5, but they're 8-9 against the spread this year. 7-9 doesn't make sense. They've got 16 games. Maybe a push in there. 8-9-1. Okay, that's what it was. So Brooklyn 8-9, 10-5 for Chicago, 11-4 for Miami. Every game that the Bulls have won, they've covered. Every game they've lost, they didn't cover. Miami's 10-5, so they just had one game that they covered that they lost. So early NBA matchups as we get into week 5, Charlie.
Well, first of all, I never play a Brooklyn game because every time I play the Nets, they kill me.
Yeah, killed me on Tuesday.
I mean, seriously, they have just this dates all the way back to last year. That team just burns me every time I play them. And I think it's symptomatic of that team and the way they play basketball. And I think it's in part and part of it is you never know who's going to play. And that's that's part of what you get when you watch the Nets, because who's going to play? You don't know. And so that makes it tough. Yeah, they've got a good record, but from a wagering standpoint, it's a nightmare. So that's there. The Warriors, geez, don't bet against the Warriors.
Don't bet against them. Although 9-4-1, I'm trying to think of the 4 games that they didn't cover. I know Memphis was one of them. I know they lost to Charlotte on Sunday, so that's 2. And I think they didn't cover against the Clippers, and they did have one push against somebody. We're going to have the underdog records because I don't think they've been underdogs very much. But clearly the game on Tuesday night, that's been the best game of the year. Phoenix came back on Dallas last night. So right now, Golden State and Phoenix, the top 2 teams in the West. Not very many people talking about the Phoenix Suns this year. And I don't remember anybody that was in the championship the year before be so underwhelming in terms of conversation coming into the next season, because everybody's talking about the Bucks, and they're not very good right now. But Golden State and Phoenix top the West. Washington and Brooklyn, Chicago and Miami top the East as well too, Charlie.
Yeah, well, Phoenix, 10-0 in the last 10. I mean, okay,
that'll help a 1-3 start at any time.
I think because they kind of stutter stepped out of the coming into the early part of the season, everybody go, oh, okay, well, that was a one and done. No, they're back together now. Things are happening. You better watch them. They're there, getting back right. But I think they're working in the shadow of the Warriors, and that's the problem they've got at this point. So
that'll be interesting. So here we are for our purposes in the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vada Party Charlie O. The NBA big at this time of the year with football on the weekends. The NBA takes precedence with college basketball just started. The line's at the bottom right here. The over-under, very interesting in the over-unders. A lot of people like to take overs early in the NBA year because there's not a lot of defense. I don't know if there's a lot of defense going on or there's a lot of bad shooting still, but there's a lot more physical play this year, and there's a lot of points of emphasis on defense this year, and you can't have the same moves you had before. 2 years ago in the bubble, it was like shooting in a gym. Everybody was making everything, and there was no defense involved. I think there's a little bit more defense just watching the games this year, a little bit more. Actually, I watch them all, but watching them, the defense has been a lot better, and as evidenced by this number, 6 teams of the 30 teams in the NBA have over 500 records when it comes to over-under. So think of it like a win-loss record. The over is the W, the under is the L. 6 teams out of 30, 1 out of 5, 20%, however you break it down, the unders are winning at an 80% clip, Charlie.
Wow. That's crazy. And Vasu, I think it is somewhat related to the rule changes, because the guys on offense now can't create some of the fouls that they were in the past, especially like on the 3-point shots and some of those kind of things.
James Harden, we're talking to you.
What's that?
I said, James Harden, we're talking to you.
Yes. Hi, James. So that does make a change. And and I'm enjoying the game more, frankly, because
it looks better. I don't know. Aesthetically, Charlie, I agree with you. I'm watching the games. I have League Pass at home. I can get it on my phone or my iPad when I'm traveling, and I'm watching the games. And aesthetically, it looks better than it has the last couple of years. And I throw the pandemic year out because that's one thing.
Oh, sure.
The last 3 years before that, lots of offense, 120s everywhere. Remember last year? Last year, Casey and I were discussing, I think you probably were part of it too. We were seeing overs and unders. In fact, our friend Jim Cosmore was on a couple of times. We were seeing overs and unders in the 230s. We even got a couple of 240s with Brooklyn and Milwaukee last year. We're not going to get 240. We're not going to get 230s this year. I mean, if we get 225, that's high right now based on the fact that everybody's played approximately 17 games. So we're almost a fourth of the way. We're just about a fourth of the way, coming up on a fourth of the way to the season, and 6 teams, 6 out of 30 are over. And that's only barely over. We're talking like 8-7, 9-4, or 9-6, something like that, where they're over. But the unders, I mean, if I'm looking at games and I see a line, like even tonight, 208.5 for the Warriors and Cavaliers, they don't score very much. And Golden State's the number 1 defense. I would think that the under might be the play there from that standpoint because of the way Cleveland's offense is. I'm looking at Miami, Washington, that could be an under. Minnesota played better defense this year. San Antonio doesn't score very well. 221 is the highest number tonight with the Clippers in Memphis, but I'm not guaranteeing the Clippers, the way they played the other night against San Antonio, they held them in 92 points. I'm not saying that game's going to go over. And no Embiid tonight, 209.5 versus Denver, and then Toronto, 215 against Utah. Toronto's okay. They went over with Portland the other night. So the unders are paving the way, and I would definitely start if you're a totals player, I would start definitely favoring the under in terms of how the NBA goes right now, Charlie.
Yeah, and Vasu, you talked about it also. It's a more fun. For me, it's more fun to watch. I don't want to turn a game on and watch the All-Star game.
Right.
I'll watch the All-Star game once a year and let them do all of that. Okay. That's fun. But I don't want to watch the All-Star game every night. I want to see some defense. I want to see some flow in the game. I want to see some passing. I want to see some dimes. And that's all of a sudden what I'm seeing. I think Dame Lillard last night had 10 dimes in that game. It was beautiful. I mean, he had a rough first half and then came back and really played strong in the second half. I mean, the way the Bulls played in that first half of that game, I thought, okay, they've got it. And
you and me both.
Yeah, well, and Lillard came back and kind of played Dame time in a way that I haven't seen him play that well. Personally, I haven't watched a lot of Portland, so he may have done that more because I think they're 7-0 at home so far this season. But he played really well, and it was fun to watch. But it was complete basketball. It wasn't just, okay, here we are, 250. As a total or whatever. It was great.
Yeah, unbelievable. And so that's what we're looking at in the NBA. One thing I learned this week on the NBA, just because if you take an underdog, be careful, because I had 4 underdogs this week and they all lost to the favorites. Knicks Pacers, last night's Bulls game, the Dallas Denver game on Tuesday night, all those underdogs I took. And I like the underdogs, and the underdogs generally come through. But boy, they all turned into favorites real quickly in watching these games the other night. So that was one. So 6 o'clock Eastern, we'll have our picks. All right, last segment before we get in the NHL. We don't talk a lot about NHL, but wagering wise, they get a lot of action on there. Obviously, the win-loss record is what the win-loss record in hockey is, similar to baseball. So you don't need that one. But here's one for you. Speaking of totals, and a lot of people like to play totals in the NHL. 10 teams are over 500 on the over-under. So same thing happening in the NHL as it is in the NBA. Lots of defense being played, better goaltending. As far as teams that are going to print playoff tickets already, Florida, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Washington, Carolina, the Rangers, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Nashville, Anaheim, the biggest surprise, Edmonton, Calgary in the West. But Florida, the best record in the NHL, Toronto right there with them, Tampa Bay, Washington, standbys, Tampa Bay, the 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and then Washington with Alexander Ovechkin, the Carolina Hurricanes as well there too, Charlie. I know you haven't watched a lot of hockey, but the over-unders in hockey, 10 teams over 500 on the over-under as well too. So find those hot goaltenders, get them going. We'll have more hockey as we get through the rest of the football season as well too. All right, last one for us, Charlie. We want to wrap up the baseball season. Awards night. Robbie Ray, Corbin Burns win the Cy Young. Robbie Ray had a great year with Toronto. We didn't know what kind of pitcher he was in Arizona. Corbin Burns barely nudged out Zach Wheeler last night. Didn't have as many innings. 58 strikeouts, no walks before he gave up his first walk this year in that series. I wouldn't have had a problem either way with Zach Wheeler or Corbin Burns winning. I think Robbie Ray, definitely the best pitcher in the American League this year in that ballpark in Toronto to go with that. And they're going to be good next year because they just signed Jose Barrios to a 7-year deal as well, too. And then tonight we've got the MVPs. I'll let you make your pick, Charlie. Soto, Harper, Tatis in the NL, Ohtani, Guerrero Jr., Marcus Semien, 2 Toronto teammates in the American League. Go.
Well, Ohtani's my guy in the American League, period. Boom. I mean, you keep doing what you're doing that way. That's got to be it. And I don't know in the National League. I don't know. I can't be. I'm going to be very honest with you. I cannot be objective on Bryce Harper because I just don't like the guy. Okay, I've just got a whole lot of reasons I don't like the guy, so I can't be objective. Tatis Jr. There's so much hype. I don't know that I believe it, so I'm going to go Soto.
Okay. Juan Soto, the best player in the National League right now, because even though they gutted the team halfway through, he's definitely the best hitter in the National League right now. A lot of people out in the West Coast thinking that none of the Dodgers made it in the top 3. Brandon Crawford didn't get a sniff into the top 3. A lot of bias there as well too. So lots to talk about as well. Rookies of the year. What were the rookies of the year? I had the rookies of the year. Arozarena in the American League. He did qualify to be a rookie in 2021. And then in the National League, I forgot who the National League Rookie of the Year is. It'll come to me in a little bit, but I'm going with Soto and Ohtani to win slightly over Guerrero in the MVP voting. And I'm trying to find the Rookie of the Year because I wanted to make sure I got everybody involved. Jonathan India, that's who it was. Jonathan India of the Cincinnati Reds had a great year, came up to play second base, ended up replacing an injured second baseman. Turned in about 25 home runs, granted that ballpark, but he turned out to be a pretty good defensive player, and he turned out to be a pretty good player. So India in the National League, Arozarena, who we already knew from 2020 in the American League, Ray and Burns, Cy Young, and then tonight closes out award season, Soto, Harper, Tatis, Ohtani, Guerrero Jr., and Semien. And, of course, we can't forget the managers, Gabe Kapler, Kevin Cash, back-to-back years. I haven't seen a back-to-back year for manager of the year in a long time, Charlie. I mean, were they undervalued again coming in both years for the Tampa Bay Rays? I guess they're always undervalued.
Tampa Bay's always going to be undervalued because they get no media coverage. It's horrible that's the case. But yeah, I mean, this guy. I mean, nobody's going to know about Kevin Cash until he's managing the Yankees, and that's what's going to happen when he does.
Check us out on social media every day by 6 o'clock during the week, 11 o'clock a.m., 3 times on Saturday. noon Eastern on Sunday. V Party Sports on Twitter, V Party Sports on Instagram, MTMA or podcast on Twitter, and you can catch us at a Gmail address, Facebook and Instagram. Send us questions as well. The Britannia Arms of Capitola, 10 years old. Check them out, facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola, 831-464-2583. And of course, the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, 40 years celebrating. 408-252-7262, BritanniaArmsDeanza.com. All right. I will be here solo tomorrow. We'll have intern Nick come on for the Make the Money and Run podcast. It'll be 1 o'clock Eastern. The Friday football show. It'll be all football everywhere, up and down, all sides. College football the last 2 weekends before we get the championship Saturday. Week 11, the NFL starts tonight with the Patriots and Falcons, but big games. As we said in the NFL, we'll have all the point spreads. We'll have all the spread records, the overs and unders for you tomorrow, going into Friday football show for the weekend. For Charlie O, I'm Vasi Vadaparty. This has been the Make the Money and Run podcast for Thursday, November 18th, 2021. Have a great day. Good luck with your games. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern for the Friday football show. Take care, everybody.